real lives, real people. Non-Identity Podcast. The Non-Identity Podcast is sponsored by Limitless Power Boxing. Find them on Instagram for all your boxing needs. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to another episode of the Non-Identity Podcast. Now, today we're joined by the founder of the Confidence Community. She's also a very successful author who has collaborated with 14 other amazing women to bring an inspiring and helpful book that should hopefully be released over the next couple of months. But most important of all, she's also a fellow Liverpool fan. Welcome to the show, the Queen of Breakthrough, Brooke Bownes.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a trauma coach and you've set up a community called the Confidence Community. Why and how did you get into helping people through their traumas?
Well, it kind of, coaching came along by accident, but the trauma part of it was because I was brought up by a narcissistic mother. And when I was born, I actually had the cord wrapped around my neck. So it was quite a traumatic birth because as I was being born, I was being strangled. So as you can imagine, that was quite traumatic. And then the doctor said that I would probably never walk or ride a bike or run. But I didn't get that memo. I did learn to walk and ride a bike and run. And although my right side is weak than my left, and it doesn't affect me in my day-to-day life. And that kind of kicked off a catalyst for my mother as well, because when you're a narcissist, you want the perfect family, and I wasn't the perfect daughter in her eyes. And she used to say to me, you don't ever talk to anybody about your medical issues because nobody will want you, nobody will love you. And she was just always on at me about, I wish you would be born normal. You didn't even have the audacity to be born normal. Why can't you be normal like everybody else? So I spent my childhood feeling like I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't, my confidence was chipped away about daily. She said that I was ugly. She wished I'd have died at birth. So all these things I grew up with thinking, the person that you're supposed to run to for safety was my worst nightmare. So I've got a lot of experience with trauma. Then, as a lot of people who grew up with a narcissist end up getting into a relationship with a narcissist. So that kind of like followed me through. I kind of jumped out the frying pan into the fire. And then I kind of realized that, hang on a minute, the common factor here is me. Maybe if I work on how I feel and what I'm doing, I'll attract different kinds of people. So I then, a friend of mine said to me about going on a coaching course. But I'd worked for years on my mindset with like reading self-development books and things like that. So she said it was like a free weekend for like a diploma, and she didn't want to go on her own. So would I go with her? And I went, yeah, sure, why not? But in the meantime, a lot of my friends have been saying, why don't you do coaching? Because you're always helping us out. You should do it and get paid for it. I went on this coaching weekend and I thought, oh, I already do that. Oh, I already do that. I already do that. So that kind of started me down the journey of being a coach, and I did all my coaching qualifications and stuff. And the rest, they say, is kind of like history. But the reason I got into the trauma side of it is because a lot of people think that, they've only got trauma in their lives if they've had a big car accident or if they've been a soldier going off to war. They don't realize that everybody has trauma in their life at some point, especially if it's holding them back and they haven't worked through that trauma to stop it holding them back. So my thing is to raise awareness of trauma, especially with like the mother wound and narcissism. And a lot of people don't even know what the mother wound is. And that's all about, if you've had a mother that hasn't healed her own wounds and she doesn't know how to like love, and she's kind of emotionally distant, and she can be quite overcritical or judgmental because she's hurting herself and she's got lots of wounds. It can be inherited by children, often inherited by the daughter rather than the son. But it's a thing that, a lot of my clients I speak to thinking, well, my mum isn't a narcissist, but she definitely wasn't there emotionally. I never felt like I was good enough. She was always criticizing me. She was always judging me, always comparing me to my siblings or my cousin or whatever. So, and a lot of those traumas hold people back because they, the four main inner child wounds are like not good enough, not important, not worthy, and not lovable. And when you start having those wounds start being felt, it's painful. So your body will do things to stop you from moving forward, like procrastinating or being a perfectionist, anything to stop you having to feel those actual wounds are quite painful.
So how did you not allow it to hold you back? Because a lot of people go through stuff like that, sort of get angry with the world and sort of then give up. But you using it to help others.
It held me back for years, and I wouldn't do things because I thought, well, I'm not good enough to do that. People will laugh at me. who am I to think, to do that? Because those are the things I heard as a child, like, who do you think you are doing that? Stop doing that. You're getting too big for your boots and that sort of thing. So as a young adult, I didn't do all the things I wanted to do because I was held back by all those thoughts and feelings in my body and my mind about what my mother used to say to me every day. And when you are a child, as things are said to you, especially if they're said to you in a regular pattern, they end up becoming ingrained in your mind and they become your truth. That's what you believe. So I'm really passionate about getting people to understand that the beliefs that they've got are often inherited by their parents or their grandparents, because trauma can go back like 7 generations. And it may not be a mother or a grandmother, it could be a teacher. In my book, I've already wrote one book, as you said, I'm already an author, about You Can Have It, How to Break Through the Self Sabotage Cycle. I talk about one of my clients in there who struggled with maths from the age of 7 until she was in her 50s, till she had some coaching with me, because she thought she was useless at maths because a teacher said to her one day at school, "You're rubbish at maths." And that kind of stuck with her because she got embarrassed because the teacher pulled her out in front of the class and embarrassed her. So that event created a trauma for her and held her back for years.
What you're saying, because of I suffer from dyslexia, but I weren't diagnosed till I was 16, and my artwork used to be showed by the art teacher of how not to do things. And even to this day, I still won't pick up a pencil and draw. It put me off art completely. So obviously I'm not over what's happened then, but I didn't realise until you've just said, like, the trauma of it, of that experience, as what's held me back. Like my daughter, she loves art, but I won't sit down or draw or paint with her because I keep going back to what that teacher used to do in our lessons.
Yeah. So you've still got a trauma from that because you've not moved forward and you can't pick up a pen or a piece of paper. Now, I became a very, very shy little girl. Like with my medical issues, I was too young to know about the doctor said I couldn't walk. But when I went back for a consultation, when I was about 5, when I had learned to walk, the doctor said, "That's great, but you'll never run or ride a bike because you're right size too weak to hold the handlebar and push the pedals." And I can remember saying to him, "I will, and I'll come back and show you." Well, my mother went absolutely mad at me when we got back home, saying, "How dare you show me up in front of the doctors? How dare you challenge a professional? Who do you think you are? Stop showing off." And she was lashing into me and sort of shouting at me. And I can remember holding my head in my hands like this and going, "I need to stay small to stay safe." And I became a very shy, introverted little girl with no confidence from that day forward. And she just built on that and built on that every day by like chipping away at me. But now I'll talk on stage. I'll talk, pre-COVID, I spoke a lot on stage and I talk a lot on Zooms and stuff. If somebody had said to me, "I was going to be doing this 20 years ago," I'd have been absolutely no way. I always used to like being behind the camera, not in front of it. But, I know what it feels like to be that scared little girl that's too frightened to speak out. And now I've worked on it and I can speak out and have a voice. I always say that I'm a voice for people until they find their own voice, so they feel empowered, because a lot of people want a voice, but they haven't got it, especially, I work a lot with women in midlife because we were growing up like children should be seen and not heard. We should sit there and be perfectly quiet and not speak out. And if we did, we got into trouble for it. So now women who are trying to be promoted and work on businesses, every time they go up to be seen and speak out, their body reacts. And even though logically they know they're safe to do it, because of the trauma trapped in their body, they're not doing it because it's sending a signal to their subconscious mind to go, "No, this isn't safe. We're not doing this."
And for you, was it like a long process of over the years, or did you just wake up one morning and have a light bulb moment where I think, right, I'm not letting this beat me. I'm going to get out and do it?
I think after I married my first husband, and 3 months later, he gave me a concussion and whiplash because he picked me up and threw me against the wardrobe. I thought, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not doing this anymore. I need to change. And I started getting into self-development books and reading those. And I spent years sort of like working on my mindset. And then I had two lovely little boys and got pregnant with my third child. And that was my next pivotal moment because I bumped into somebody I hadn't seen for a while. She went, "Oh," she said, "you having another baby?" I said, "Yeah." Quite innocent remark. She said, "Well, I bet you'd love it to have a little girl this time," which, because I've got 2 boys, most people would say that. And that was, I kind of like, no, because what if I had the same relationship with my daughter that I had with my mother and she had with her mother? And so it's like, I really need to up working on myself and working how I feel about myself. Although I got a great relationship with my sons. It's like, what would happen with our daughter? But thankfully, the story does end really well. My daughters are 28 and 29 now, and we're best friends. They're amazing. So, you know, I am that cycle break that I talk about in my book. So it's really is about breaking that cycle. But it was realizing like that had enough time when my husband was treating me like a doormat. Basically, I thought I'm done with this. I've had this all my life. I'm not going to live this way any longer. So that was the I've had it type moment, and things started to change from there on in.
Oh, wow. So the confidence community, what is the confidence community?
The confidence community is a free Facebook group, and it's for women who have been through trauma or haven't got any confidence. And I've called it the confidence community because people want more confidence, but they don't always understand why they haven't got it.
Yeah.
So if I'd have named it like the trauma group, people say, well, I haven't got trauma, so I don't want to join that. But underlying not having any confidence, there's often a trauma, like you quite rightly said. You haven't got the confidence to pick a pen and paper up now to draw because of a trauma that happened in your childhood. So once they get into that community, I talk a lot about where the lack of confidence come from, or lack of self-esteem, or the self-doubt comes from. And I help them to work through that, and to give them sort of tips and techniques and ideas of how to help them through their trauma. And obviously, you know, a lot of them come to work with me as clients, and we actually work really, really deep and release that trauma so they can do what they want to do, whether it's going for a promotion, change their job, become a parent, get married, you know, to the love of their lives, or start a business, whatever it is they want to do. I'm all about people stepping into what they truly want to do, to break through those old stories and those old beliefs so they can live the life that they want to live. And that's why I've called it the confidence community. And it's like to be confident, to be seen, to be heard, and to have fun. Because, you know, a lot of people, when they've gone through trauma as a child, they didn't have that childhood fun because we were too hyper vigilant. We were treading on eggshells, wondering what's going to be next. How do we keep ourselves safe?
No, that sounds amazing, community. Before we talk about the new book, just writing in general, have you found that a challenge? And what is your writing process? Do you write a little bit at a time, or do you just lock yourself away and just write until it's done?
That's interesting, because I've done my books two different ways. The book I did on my own last year was called, like I said, You Can Have It, How to Break Through the Self Sabotage Cycle. I challenged myself to write it and publish it in 90 days.
Wow.
So it was start to finish. I didn't know anything about writing a book when I started, but by the time I finished, I knew a lot about writing a book and getting it published. And the reason I did it that way was not to say, yay, look at me, what I've done. It was to inspire other people to think, well, if Brooke can do that in 90 days, what can I do for me? And it was interesting because when I first started it, people would say, oh, you're brave, I could never do that. But as I went on, I documented my journey on Facebook every day. And it was like people were coming on the journey with me, and people start to say, oh, can you show me how to write a book? Or I've started to write my book. Or somebody said they'd gone for a promotion. Few people started a new business. And one person even wrote to me and said, I've actually asked somebody out on a date that I've been wanting to ask for a long time, but haven't had the confidence. But I thought, if you can write a book and publish it in 90 days, surely I can ask somebody out on a date. So to me, before the book was even published, it wasn't really about the book. It was about inspiring people to do what they want to do in their lives. But the second book, because I've done a collaboration with 14 other women, all I've had to do is actually just write the chapter, and it's sent back to the editors and come back to me and like tweak it again. And the rest is all sort of being done for me because it's a collaborative thing. So I've done it two different ways, really. But yeah, my writing style is I tend to like start a chapter and just see where I go, and sort of type out until the flow sort of stops, and then when the flow stops, I'll leave it and then do the next chapter. But I'm better, because I know myself. If I challenge myself to do something in 90 days, it will get done. If I think, right, I'll write a book, you know, next year, I'll probably start writing it in October and finish it in December.
And I think that's a really good way, because like this podcast, I had the idea for this for about 8 or 9 months, and I just wasn't confident enough to hit the go button. And then one Saturday, I just thought, no, now it's time to go for it. I went out in my garden and recorded a trailer. It's a really bad trailer. It's got wind and everything. But I thought, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And then it's gone on from there. And I so wish I'd done it sooner, because I've met so many amazing people along the way. I thought, why did I have this in my head for 8 months? I just needed to have the confidence to, once I've recorded the first episode, if you look back at the earlier episodes, there's things you're learning as you go along. It gets better as it goes, but I've just never had the confidence, because I always thought, what if the first one's really bad? It ruined it all. And I think like setting yourself a challenge and giving yourself a quick time limit if you're trying something new is quite a really good technique to use.
Yeah, and I did the same when I did Facebook Lives, because I don't like being in front of the camera, and I didn't like my voice back then. But my coach said, right, you need to do some Facebook Lives on your personal profile. Oh. So I challenged myself to do a Facebook Live every day for a month, and I thought, right, February's the shortest month, I'll go for February. So I did a Facebook Live every day for a month, and after that I got over the fear of doing a Facebook Live, because I was just doing. And sometimes when we go to start something new, our bodies will actually sort of get triggered off, our nervous system gets triggered off, which kind of sends a signal to the mind, like, okay, I'm not doing that, that doesn't feel safe, so we stop. So sometimes it's that habit of doing something. So somebody said to me, okay, right, let's write a book again next year, I'll be like, yeah, sure, because I've done a couple now, and it's like the momentum just sort of picks up. So it's really like getting to know your own body, which I'm all about, is when somebody comes to me and say, oh, I really feel stuck doing that, and well, what feelings come up in your body? Because people aren't aware that their body reacts. Like, I know if I say to somebody who's got no confidence, okay, let's go do a Facebook Live, their shoulders will go up, their jaw will go stiff, their heart will start pounding, their palms will get sweaty, which is all signals to tell your mind that you're in danger, that something's going to happen, that we need to either start fighting or we need to run, because we're in trouble. But actually, all we're doing is sat in front of a computer. So that cortisol pumps around our bodies but doesn't get used up. So it can cause disease in our bodies, because all that cortisol gets pumped into our bodies and it just sits in the bodies and we don't disperse it. Because cortisol on its own is a great thing to have, because if you are being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or a grizzly bear or whatever, you want that cortisol, that adrenaline rush, to be able to run and get away from it or to fight it. But obviously, not sitting in front of a computer getting ready to do a Facebook Live. But again, that's the trauma of being seen, because like when they were kids, if they spoke out, you'd often get into trouble, and it was traumatic. So your body's going, no, we're not going there. So it's releasing that trauma, and that's what I help my clients to do, to release that trauma. Because when I speak to clients, they went, it makes no sense. I know I'm completely safe to do a Facebook Live, but I'm absolutely petrified, and they'll be shaking, and I can see them shaking on the screen. It's understanding how the body works. And I spent years working on my mindset without realizing the trauma that was stuck in my body. But once I realized the trauma that was stuck in my body, that coupled with the mindset was the thing that sort of just shook me off. And it was like, okay, I can do anything. I can achieve whatever I want. And that's not to say I still don't get those thoughts pop into my head. And pre-COVID, the last time I went to talk on stage, I was at the back getting all mic'd up, and my little voice popped in my head saying, what do you think you're doing? And because that's what my mother used to say to me. But if that had been 20 years ago, I'd have probably run off into the toilets crying, saying, I don't know. But what I actually do, and I encourage my clients to do, and I encourage your listeners to do, is when the voices pop up into your head, answer it. Because basically that's the scared little you just saying, last time we did that, it was a bit scary. Are we going to be in danger? So when that voice popped up and said, what do you think you're doing? I just answered in my head, I'm going to go stand on stage. I'm going to share my story and impact and inspire all these people in this room. And with that voice quieting down, and letting yourself know, I am okay now. As an adult, I am okay to do the things I want to do. So it's really being aware of your body and those thoughts, because those thoughts, we're often taught, we just push them away, they'll go away. But it's a bit like if you've ever met a 5-year-old who wants your attention, they don't go away, they just get louder and louder and louder and louder until you actually give them that attention. And it's the same with our thoughts. Those thoughts will keep coming back until you give them the attention. And I know it sounds a bit daft saying like speak to yourself, but that's basically what you're doing. You're reassuring yourself that you're going to be okay.
No, definitely. So the new book, what's the premise of the new book, and has it got a title yet, or is it still in the final stages? Or
it's still in the final stages. That the title isn't being revealed yet. It's going to be launched on the 19th of September, but it's like I said, it's 15 women in total telling their story of how they've been through the narcissism, domestic violence, or trauma, and how they've recovered from it. Now they've come out the other side. So it's going to be an absolutely fantastic read. We've had a celebrity actually heard about it and wants a copy of it because
Wow.
they're like an advocate for domestic violence. Mel B from the Spice Girls, she does a lot with domestic violence and narcissism and stuff, so she wants a copy of it. So it's going to be all about, so if you've ever suffered from like narcissism or domestic violence or trauma, it's going to be a book that's going to be a read that you're going to want to read, and it'll be out on the 19th of September on Amazon.
Oh, fantastic. Right, just before we go, I've got one question that I ask everyone. So this answer will not change your life journey so far, but if you have 30 seconds with your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
I am enough. I am lovable. I am worthy. I am important. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve in life.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to get hold of you, where can they go to find you?
I hang out on Facebook a lot, so it's Brooke Bownes 01 on Facebook, or they can email me at brooke@brookebownes.com. I will send you the links for them all if you want to.
We'll drop the links down in the description.
It's for women, so it's a confidence community, the confidence to be seen, to be heard, and to have fun on Facebook as well. So yeah, surely come along and join in that as well.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully you can join us in 6 to 8 months and we can see how well the book's doing and talk more a bit about the book once it's out there to the world. Good luck with everything. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for having me.